and welcome to episode number 38 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And not the most busy of weeks, which is pretty good for us considering how hard we've been working.
Yes, very, very nice. You all listened to me at the end of last week's episode when I said you could keep it a little chiller this week. I've been proud of all the trades and stuff, but boy, are we I feel like we shot like 3 episodes to get through a week's worth of content last week. So it was refreshing to not have 3 episodes this week, but we are excited to come here with our 38th episode. Hard to believe we have done that many. And you want to dive right into the trades, or?
Yeah, I guess let's dive into the trade. There was one. It was made by me. So I traded. So I guess in the record book, the trade goes: the Will Smith have agreed to trade Conor and Conor's 2022 third to Danger Moose for Conor and Conor's 2022 second. So the record shows that I traded a second round pick for a third round pick. And so that's a little confusing. People may ask why I did that. But in reality, to understand this trade, you have to go back almost a year. The trade deadline last year was late August. Me and Andrew were workshopping a trade mere minutes before the deadline. And the framework of it was Kyle Freeland and Ross Stripling, 2 pitchers who weren't very good. We were trading them for each other. Let's see exactly what the details were. I also gave up a second in that deal. That's not the best. But the important part there is that we were running out of time to seal the deal. So we were just like, you know what, let's put it through and let's throw a player to be named later on either side, and we'll figure out the deal next year. We'll figure out who else is going through later. So we both had an open player to be named later that we were just like sitting on for the next time we made a deal with each other. We can kind of throw those players in or can call it part of that deal. And so fast forward to last week, I was looking for a saves guy. Hector Neris he hasn't been that bad, but he's been bad. He's maybe losing the closer spot. And I was looking for a closer. Jake McGee is leading the league in saves, I believe. Either that or he's near the top. And he's been fantastic. The Giants are getting a lot of saves. And I kind of asked about him. We decided, okay, the price would be, I would be giving up a second rounder in exchange for McGee and a third rounder, which is a type of trade I love to make. But then we thought, we have these players to be named later just kind of sitting there. What if we announced this trade in the most confusing way possible? So in reality, the trade was McGee and the third for the second. But the way we announced it, McGee was one of the players to be named later from the earlier trade. So we announced it as the trade being a second and a third, and McGee just being a player to be named later from earlier, going from Andrew to me. And we thought maybe we could confuse some people, such as yourself or Erik. It seemed to work. And overall, it was a very successful trade that was fun, and it's going to help my team out.
Yeah, Jake McGee is actually 12th in saves. I just searched it up, although he does have 6 holds as well. And if you combine his saves and holds, he'd be second in combined saves and holds. So behind Mark Melanson, who has been fantastic this year for the Padres. But yeah, I thought this was a good trade for both sides. I think that Andrew, even though he's doing so well this year somehow, which we'll get into more later, despite that, he's still a rebuilding team. So to get off a 33 is how old Jake McGee is. Maybe he's older now.
I think he's older than that.
He's been around forever. He's 34. He's going to turn 35 in August. So to get rid of a 34-year-old reliever and move up in a draft, I mean, that's a no-brainer for him. And it's kind of a low cost for you to get a player who has 21 combined saves and holds this year on one of the best teams in baseball. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. I'm actually a little curious as to how he wasn't able to get a bit more for McGee. I thought a team who needs saves or holds might be more interested in going after McGee, but evidently not. Uh, Regardless, I think good trade for both sides. And the only other thing that stood out to me from what you said was that you two have now made 2 Kyle Freeland trades in less than a year.
That's true. I mean, this one, that was true before this deal.
Yeah, well, I know, but like I didn't realize, or I must have blocked out of my memory that you had made 1 trade for him last year. I thought
Yeah,
you.
it was right at the deadline, like seconds before.
Yeah, that's fair. Still though, Kyle Freeland.
Kyle Freeland.
That's where we are. Anything else on this trade? I did appreciate the creativity. But I mean, I think for what it actually was, there isn't too much of a debate here. I just think the structure was really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to help my team out a lot. I feel like I got him for decently cheap. Like I said, I love the trades where I trade back a little bit in the draft and acquire a player as well. Um, and yeah, solid deal. A lot of a lot of fun to mess with the structure.
I agree. Well, that was the only trade made this week. I know some teams are talking other trades. I'll be curious to see what else goes down as the calendar starts to turn into July. And we start to see teams really make the push to either, win now or recognize that they aren't going to win now and start to sell off. So it's going to be a fun trade season, but are you ready to move on to our matchups?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right in there.
Yeah. So great week for everyone. I think where we wanted to start out this week was one of the bigger upsets that we've seen in a while. And also, I'd say one of the worst offensive weeks we've seen by a team in a while. And that was the Andrew versus Ruthvik matchup. Andrew won in pretty convincing fashion, 9-2 to 1. Andrew is now 5-6-1. Ruthvik is now 5-5-2. And Andrew is a half game out of a playoff spot behind Ruthvik. They are 1-1 against each other. I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this matchup?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that being one of the worst offensive weeks for Ruthvik, because it wasn't even the worst offensive week of this week. There was another team we'll talk about later that had a worse week. But yeah, Andrew came to play and he was amazing. 41 doubles, 44 RBIs. And the pitching, of course, was just absolutely lights out. I mean, the whip under 1, he got 6 saves, which was one of the most in the league this week. I mean, he only lost 2 categories. He absolutely lit it up. Cole Irvin was phenomenal. Tarek Skubal had 13 strikeouts and a 2.31 ERA. So I was just very, very impressed with Andrew's team.
Yeah, after starting 0-4, Andrew's team is 5-2-1 in the past 8 weeks, and that includes some pretty decent wins. They beat Ruthvik and Nick, and they beat Clayton and Jake. They're not an easy out. They beat EBO, so they did lose their first 4 weeks of the season to some quality teams. So four teams in the playoffs right now, as a matter of fact. Ruthvik and Nick, Conor and Erik. And now this time around, they've beaten one of those playoff teams. I'll be curious to see how they do against the other projected playoff teams. But they're very much beating up against some of these teams that are kind of just sitting right outside the playoff hunt in a way that I didn't think they would, and hence their record. So good for Andrew's team. As for Ruthvik's team, this team, just needs a lot of help offensively. And this has been a story of this team forever, and it's not getting better. And it doesn't help that Bregman's on the IL and Gregorius is on the IL. But there's a lot of things that Ruthvik and Nick could do, I feel like, to improve this offense, and they just have not, for whatever reason, been able to accomplish that yet. And that leads to my question here. Are you worried that they're just not going to hit enough to even make the playoffs, or do you think, just given the field, they're still likely to make it in?
I mean, they do still hold down the 6th seed. They have half a game lead over Andrew, and I still think that they're a better team than Andrew's team. But yeah, the hitting is a concern. I mean, they had a 278 on base percentage this week. That's awful. Ruthvik and Nick didn't make any roster acquisitions this week, so that maybe is part of the reason they weren't doing so well. They maybe could have found some more RBIs on their bench, although even still, Andrew had more than twice as many as them. But yeah, it's certainly not out of the question that they missed the playoffs because of this offense.
Yeah, since starting the season 3-0, they are now 2-5-1. It looks like
2-5-2.
2-5-2. Sorry, I can't do math. And I know, like,
2 ties minus 0 ties equals 2 ties.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
I think so, at least. Granted, their tie against Daniel and Alex was kind of just a bad luck with a weird lineup setting error thanks to ESPN. But I mean, they've not looked good. Like, Andrews looked better than them over the last 8 weeks, just objectively. He's won 3 more games over the past 8 weeks than they have. So I just don't think the ceiling is there where it was last year. And I think that they need to trade some of that pitching to get bats and really figure out a better roster construction than the one they have right now. Because while I think they have one of the top, 3 pitching staffs in this league, you're not going to get anywhere if you are only capable of consistently winning, 4 to 5 pitching categories a week and none of the hitting categories. So we'll see what happens. But I think for them to make a real push, they're going to have to make several moves at the deadline to upgrade their offense. Guys like Willie Calhoun, Ty France, Yandy Diaz ain't going to cut it.
Well, they've already traded away Tommy Pham, and Ruthvik seems like he wants to take a step back at the trade deadline as opposed to adding.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense, because if you think about it right now, right, if you're looking at the top at like you, me, Erik, and like Anthony, and then you also see Conor really making the push to win right now, and you're like Ruthvik and you're kind of hanging on to the 6th seed by a thread, like, do you realistically think that you're going to win a championship this year? And if the answer is no, then I don't see why you're, going to make a bunch of significant moves for older assets that can help you win now, when he could go out and make a trade like going to get Brandon Marsh like he did last week. So it makes sense. But it also makes me concerned about whether or not they're really intent on getting a playoff spot. And if the intent's not there, maybe they're just not going to get it.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. They still are holding on to it. I would bet on them, but it's looking a little iffy.
Yeah, I think I bet on them less because of their performance and more because just who the teams are competing for that spot. It almost feels like they're the best of a mediocre bunch, which is to be expected for teams in that like 6 to 9 range. But still, let's turn to Andrew for a second. Does this win make you reconsider your stance that he's not a playoff team?
I mean, I don't know if it makes me reconsider my stance that he's not a playoff team, but it definitely makes me think higher of him. He looked phenomenal this week.
Yeah, if Andrew's team can play with any semblance of consistency like they did this week moving forward, I mean, I think an outside shot for the playoffs certainly exists. And I think the key is the next 3 weeks, because I think, as I mentioned, they play you this week, Erik and Conor Those are 3 playoff teams. And if they have any shot of making the playoffs, I think that they're going to have to snag a win or two off of a team in that group. And I'd lump Anthony in there too, who I think they play a couple weeks after that. They need to go like 2-2 in those 4 matchups, I think, to realistically have a shot to make it. Plus, take care of business against some of these non-playoff teams. So we'll see. They're definitely an interesting team to follow. Kudos to Andrew for doing as well as he has. I don't think any of us expected that to be the case. But anything else, or do you want to move on to our next matchup?
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. So EBO tied for the 5th time.
Yeah, 5 ties in 12 weeks. I mean, not in my wildest expectations that I think that was going to happen. Like it's baffling. It makes no sense to me.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't even know what to say. And Erik is the team they tied. Erik used all 8 of his acquisitions. He went out and had a phenomenal ERA, 2.395, which beat EBO. His whip wasn't anything special, but it also beat EBO's, which was pretty lousy. But yeah, overall, I guess this was a bit of a mediocre week for Erik. I mean, the pitching quantity stats are going to be deflated by the fact that he's facing EBO and he's not streaming a bunch of starters. He used about half as many as he normally would have. So you can't really judge him that way, but 11 homers isn't great. The 315 on base percentage. Normally his OBP is a little lower than other teams anyway, but that's not a great number. But the one thing that interests me, or that was of interest to me, was he started Max Scherzer on the final day to absolutely no benefit of his in a matchup where ERA was decently close. If Scherzer got blown up, then he would have lost. EBO would have flipped ERA and made it a 7-5 victory, where best case scenario, Scherzer, which is what happened, Scherzer gave him a quality start, struck out a few extra batters, and nothing changed. So it felt like a weird, rare blunder managerially for Erik.
See, I wouldn't argue it's a blunder, and here's why. Going into Sunday, EBO had not hit the 20-inning limit to get their ERA and whip to count. And had they strung together, EBO ended up having 3 relievers pitch, and they threw 3 scoreless innings, didn't give up a hit or a walk. They were all great. They now had another EBO reliever to pitch. Because they had so few innings, that ERA is going to drop below the 2.40 level that Erik had. And had Erik not started Scherzer, who had a 1.5 ERA when it was all said and done on the day, that ERA is probably closer to where EBO's actual ERA was, thereby meaning that EBO maybe would have just needed literally a couple of outs to surpass their ERA, which would have handed EBO the win. So I like Erik trusting Scherzer there. It is risky. And part of the reason I feel so strongly about this opinion is because that's what happened to me last week. EBO had 7 scoreless innings or something crazy like that the Sunday before this one. And that flipped ERA in my matchup, and that very nearly cost me to win. Unfortunately, I made the bad gamble starting Zach Eflin. And that blew up in my face. Although I think Eflin, had I not started him, I still would have lost ERA. So, point is, I agree with EBO or Erik's strategy here, but I do think this was a pretty mediocre week for him overall. I mean, I agree with that. The offense needs to get better, and I think this is part of what we say when we're just like, or this is part of the reason I ranked Erik number 3 is because don't buy the whole consistency of using guys like Jake Fraley and Ryan O'Hearn and some
Oh
of these.
God, he owns Ryan O'Hearn now. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
and I mean, like even some of the guys he has that are performing well right now, like Jonathan Scopes' breakout right now is not really supported by the peripherals. I'm not sold for the full season on Tommy Pham. Giancarlo Stanton could easily get hurt. Tyler O'Neill is not somebody I love. Max Stassi is nothing. Actually, Erik just cut him. So
Erik has also cut Ryan O'Hearn, by the way.
okay, so there you go.
He went
So
1 for
like
12 for him.
I still think there's enough question marks in this offense where it's going to be hard to sustain a winning team in the playoffs when maybe you're not entirely sure who you're counting on. So,
Yeah, there's something there, for sure. And yeah, maybe he was watching your matchup last week and saw that as a reason to trust Scherzer.
yeah. Either way, it's Max Scherzer. I wouldn't if I was in his shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Also, just like trust your guys. You reach a point where if you try to get too cute with who you're going to bench, it comes back to bite you. And I've found that more often than not to be the case. Sometimes it's better just to have faith in your guys. And it'd be one thing if it was like a guy with like a 5 ERA, right? But it's Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer is a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So I have no problems with that decision. Even if it would have cost him, I wouldn't have had a problem with that decision.
Right.
But you want to move on here, or anything else you want to?
Yeah, no, let's move on. I guess the next matchup I wanted to talk about was Yuki, and he was down huge going into Friday, Sunday, and somehow, some way, his team came back and beat Alex and Zach 6-5-1.
I have no clue how this happened. I swore he was up, or like Alex was up like 9-1 or something like that, like most of the week, even like going into like midday Sunday. Like, I don't know what happened. It's pretty baffling. And I mean, Yuki's pitching just went ham on Sunday. I mean, Kershaw had 13 strikeouts, 8 innings, 1 earned. I mean, he got the quality start that put him over to win 6-5-1. So I wouldn't have even called it a spectacular week for Yuki, and I don't think Alex played much better, but somehow Yuki pulled it off. It kind of came out of nowhere. Yuki, once he benched James Caprillion on accident this week, I just kind of assumed he was done, and he wasn't. Kudos to him, but he's still sitting there at 2-9-1. Maybe he could string together a couple wins here. I mean, he's not a playoff team, but maybe the record could look a bit more respectable than it is when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, I believe going into Sunday they were tied in 4 different categories. I want to say it was 6-2-4. So a lot had to go right for Yuki, and it really did. I mean, that team flipped runs. What else? Yeah, runs was tied. He got a save that ended up making a difference. It's just crazy. And now Yuki still is last in the league. Actually, he is, half a game behind the Fighting Bellies. But yeah, I think this team is a little bit better than their record. I had them 11th instead of 12th. But just kind of a fun one to watch, kind of come into fruition.
Yeah, I mean, I still think this is the worst team in the league, but I mean, great to see them kind of pull off a win. And I mean, for Alex and Zach, just a tough loss. I mean, had they won, 4-7-1, maybe we could argue they're kind of like on the fringe of the playoff hunt. I think they would have been like a game and a half back of a playoff spot, same record as like Jake and Clayton, who we think are kind of sitting on the fringe. But at 3-8-1, being 2.5 games back with some of the teams ahead of them. I mean, I think that this might be it. Although they do have kind of an easier schedule coming up, so maybe they could string together a couple of wins. But I don't think we're seeing a repeat playoff run for them like they did this past season.
I agree. I mean, not that they had a playoff run; they made the playoffs.
Yeah, well, run to the playoffs, I guess. I don't know. Bear with me here, Cam.
All right.
But before we go to our next matchup, one thing I forgot to mention in the Erik EVO matchup, I think this is the first time that two teams in both their head-to-head matchups of the season tied, because they tied week 1.
Wow. Let me look into that.
Yeah, please do. I'm really curious. I feel like that has to be right, but like I feel like we would have known if it would have happened before, but
yeah, so in 2019, Erik and Alex and Zach were the only teams that tied twice. And just looking, it's not showing me the full schedule for each team. That is annoying.
I highly doubt it was.
But yeah, there is a slight possibility that they were the team that tied each other both times. And yeah, going back to, well, nope, it's not true because week 21, Erik beat Alex and Zach. So they did not tie twice. And back to 2018, a few teams had 3 ties. That's gonna be too hard to look through. I'm gonna say maybe we'll have looked through it by the time this episode comes out, but I'm not gonna do that right now.
Makes sense. We'll definitely look into that. After all, it is the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. So naturally, we have to bring you all the stats. But let's move on to our next matchup here. Which one did we want to talk about next?
Yeah, do we want to just dive into your matchup?
Yeah, let's just dive into my matchup. This is what a podcast. This one was just Clayton and Jake played well. I just played better. They had a very good week offensively. 50 RBI, 17 homers, 9 stolen bases, a 364 OBP. Like, that's fantastic. And then on the pitching side, pretty solid quantity. I mean, their whole thing this week is they're just going to throw the kitchen sink at me and just kind of see what had happened. And I mean, they had 13 starts. Only 6 of them ended in quality starts, but they're still able to rack up 91 Ks, post an ERA just under 4. So I feel like most weeks that's a recipe to win. Unfortunately, my offense just went off second consecutive week with over 60 ribbies. I had 50 runs, 21 doubles, 18 homers, 372 OBP. It was fantastic. Despite having 4 fewer starts than them, we tied in quality starts and only had 13 less strikeouts. Was able to kind of pull it off in holds, and then ditto with ERA and WHIP. So just kind of a tough luck situation for them. I advanced to 12-0. They dropped to 4-7-1. A win there would have been huge for their hopes to potentially steal a playoff spot from Ruthvik and Nick. As it stands, they're a game and a half back. I mean, I still think they're in it, but their path definitely got harder. And I do remind me of Ruthvik and Nick in the sense that it seems like they might be trying to take a step back and retool. So I don't even know if they're necessarily staring at the playoffs this year as something they really want, but we'll see.
Yeah, first and foremost, I will confirm that yes, EVO and Erik are the first set of teams to tie twice in a season. Congratulations. But yeah, I agree. I think Clayton and Jake's team is kind of set up to win next year. That's what it looks like they're trying to do. They can still very easily sneak into the playoffs, considering Ruthvik doesn't seem to want it, and Andrew is just kind of Andrew. His team, not him as a person.
Yeah. Good clarification there.
Yes. So yeah, I think they can easily stumble into that 6th seed. Um, but yeah, on the whole, you absolutely wrecked this week. I mean, you fell short in strikeouts, but Jake led the league in strikeouts. You had one of the top runs weeks and doubles weeks. You drove in 62 runs, which is unbelievable. 372 on base. And then the ERA under 3, the whip under 1. Just kind of classic chugging along. You had a little bit of a scare, but that was more to do with Jake being good than you being bad.
Yeah, it didn't really help that he kind of had a bunch of starters at the beginning of the week, and I think that kind of skewed the numbers a bit. But I feel like it happens a lot of weeks. I start the week off slow, although we are recording this on Monday, so I'm looking at my hitting numbers today, and whew, they are very good to start out. So maybe this week bucks the trend, but I feel like I usually start the week out slow, and then by like Saturday, it's like, all right, I'm gonna win, barring something crazy on Sunday. So happy to see things going the way they are. I'm now 12-0 and 9 more. If I can get 9 more wins, I can complete my undefeated season. I have not. We were talking about this last week. I have not lost a matchup in the podcast era.
You have not? Yeah. The before and after the podcast are kind of separate eras.
Yeah,
And you have not lost in the modern era of the league.
yeah. AP and BP.
Mhm.
We are AP and
AP.
no losses. So we'll see. Anything else before you can't stop me from talking about how awesome my team is for an entire time. So anything else before I keep doing that?
Yeah, let's move on then if you're ready.
Yeah, I
Uh,
am.
yeah,
I'm ready.
let's go into my matchup because this was what I've been waiting for all year. I cruised. I let my foot off the gas early. I didn't have to worry really at any point about my team. I beat Conor 9-1. I only ended up making one acquisition and I tore it up. I had a 360 on base, 59 runs led the league, 23 doubles led the league. I struck out a lot of batters. I got 4 saves. My pitching on the whole was kind of iffy. The ERA was down substantially from where it was going into Sunday, but the whip wasn't good, and I still got 0 holds. So that's something I should probably address. But on the whole, I had a great hitting week, and I feel like it was a bit wasted against Conor, who I teased this earlier, had probably one of the worst hitting weeks I've ever seen. He had 2 home runs. They both came on Wednesday. 21 RBI, 261 on base percentage, which I believe might be the worst ever also.
We need to check that.
Yeah, I looked and I sent it into the Slack, but that message has since been deleted. What the single week worst OBPs were. So I guess I'd have to go through and look again. But yeah, on the whole, maybe my good hitting week was a little bit wasted against a team with a hitting week like this, but I'll take it. I improved to 7-3-2, and now I'm tied with Erik. He's still got the tiebreaker over me, but I have the same record as him.
Yeah, I mean, Conor, so you're actually incorrect. Conor did not get his first home run until Friday, and he did not get his
God.
first RBI until Wednesday when he had 2.
How does
And
that happen?
going into Friday, he had 0 homers and 5 ribbies. I mean, this is what I've been saying about Connor's team all this year. He is somehow racking up wins, but he's just so inconsistent on a week to week basis that you just can't really trust him. And he's racked up enough wins now where I almost think like he's going to get a playoff spot that by default, especially because there's only 9 weeks left and some of the challenges that some of these other teams are facing. But I mean, I wonder if based on the way his team is constructed right now, he is just going to be a one and done team. Like I don't really see a path to getting past the first round. I don't see him beating you or Erik in a hypothetical 3v6 matchup, assuming one of you two is the 3 seed. And I don't see him beating Anthony, assuming Anthony is the 4 seed, which he would be right now if the season, ended now, and Conor was the 5 seed, which I believe he's slotted as right now. So
He is, yeah.
I would also argue that Ruthvik's team, despite all of its flaws, is a better team. So I still think this is a playoff team, but I've said this all year. I still think Conor's team is a year away, and I think this week was a prime example of it. That being said, I mean, he's not 2 homers and 21 RBIs with a 261 OBP bad, but there's some improvements that need to be made, and I expect Conor to have a pretty big trade deadline, actually, just kind of given how aggressive he's been really since the beginning of last offseason trying to improve this team. So it would not surprise me to see him make some acquisitions to try and boost himself up. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe Anthony is separating himself into a tier of his own ahead of Ruthvik and Conor.
Yeah, I think it's kind of starting to maybe look that way. Yeah, especially since Conor really does need to add a bat or two at the deadline. But yeah, speaking of Anthony forming a tier of his own, let's talk about his matchup where he won 11-1 over the Fighting Bellies. I believe this was the largest win of the season by any team so far.
Yeah, if not the largest, and definitely tied for the largest. I don't know if anybody else had an 11-1 win at one. Actually, I did. I beat Andrew 11-1, so second or tied for the largest. Yeah, huge win for Anthony. I know he's been struggling a bit the past few weeks. After starting the season off 6-1, he tied with EBO and then lost 3 straight to you, Conor, and Erik. So nice for him to get back into the win column. I think the switch back to divisional play helped. He was 5-1 in the division to start the season. So I'm wondering if maybe he can go on a run the next couple of weeks, playing Yuki, then Clayton and Jake, and playing Alex and Zach this week before he kind of gets back into the tough part of his schedule. But I mean, he just dominated this week. So maybe he starts to get back on track a bit.
I think so, and especially with me playing Erik in a couple of weeks, I could see Anthony jumping up into the 3 seed after that, and potentially even if there's an upset on my side of the league, jumping up to number 2. Who knows? He was number 2 through the first half of the first half.
Yeah, I think I'd say that he could take over that 2 or 3 seed, but I don't realistically think that he's going to end the season with the 2 or 3 seed, simply for the reason that I think you and Erik both have better teams, and I think there is a tier break still between your and Erik's team and his team. So I fully expect him to settle as the 4 seed, but I think you're right. Just kind of given the matchups in the next couple of weeks, I think he could, temporarily put himself back up to the 2 seed. I guess the 3 seed wouldn't be out of, I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if he finishes there, because it would just require one of you or Erik to have a couple down weeks. But
yeah, I kind of meant more temporarily in that 3 seed. But
yeah. I mean, I think so too. I just, again, I think there is a path at the end of the season to possess that 3 seed.
There is
more where I'm at. But yeah, were there any other matchups, or we get through them all?
Yeah, no, that's all of them. That is all 6 matchups.
We did that very quickly. This feels like our quickest episode yet, or in a while at least. Good for us. But are we ready to dive into the matchup we are previewing?
Yeah, so the matchup to watch, was there one that you had in mind, Sahil?
Shit, which one did we say we were going to talk about?
I don't know. I don't know that we chose one.
No, you definitely.
Oh, was it Erik
Eric,
versus Ruthvik?
yeah. Okay. So yeah, the matchup we're going to preview this week is Erik versus Ruthvik, two current playoff teams, both kind of coming off disappointing weeks. Erik coming off a rough tie to EBO, and Ruthvik and Nick getting blown out by Andrew. I think both teams are kind of looking to get back into the win column here. It seems like despite Erik losing, I think he is ascending, or despite him tying, sorry, he is ascending, and Ruthvik and Nick's team looks like they're kind of descending. And because of that, I mean, I wonder if, maybe this matchup isn't as close as maybe we would have predicted at the beginning of the year, but anything can happen in any given week.
Yeah, I agree. I think there aren't a ton of marquee matchups this week.
Yeah.
But this is the only one of two current playoff teams. And they Ruthvik and Nick really do need a win this week to kind of set themselves back on the right course, with perhaps even a 4 or 5 seed in mind. But Erik's going to be a tough task, and I'm not sure I expect them to accomplish it.
Yeah, we'll get into our picks in a second, so I'm not going to officially spoil it, but I feel like we both are kind of on the same page here with who we think we're going to have win. I also want to just briefly shout out your matchup versus Andrew. I mean, the way Andrew's been playing the past couple of weeks, and he just beat a playoff team. Maybe he pulls off an upset over you. You're both 5-2-1 over the last 8 weeks. Like, if you were to take out weeks 1 through 4, like, maybe we're actually looking at this matchup a little differently. Maybe that's the matchup that we picked to, be the matchup to watch. So I don't know if Andrew's going to be able to pull it off, but I'm sure going to have a whole lot of fun seeing if he's able to. So
Yeah, I say this about every team, but I am worried about Andrew.
yeah. What was the phrase you used to me today? I told it to Andrew. You told me you were, quote, weirdly scared to face Andrew. So
Yeah, it's weird that I'm scared, but I am. And if Andrew wins and if Ruthvik loses, then Andrew is the 6th seed. That's a fun fact.
which strangely feels like a real possibility.
It really does. And if those things happen, then I would probably be playing Andrew in the first round.
Damn. That would have been very hard to fathom at the beginning of the season. I thought that this might have been the worst team in the league, and just, man, kudos to Andrew. I mean, where did I put him in my power rankings? I'm pretty sure I put him at 11. I did, but he is sure not playing like an 11 right now. So
He is not.
he is not.
Yeah,
But
maybe more like a 9, like I had him. Just
yeah, you did have him at 9. Maybe he is more of a 9. I mean, he's 7th in the standings, so maybe we're both just under ranking him.
Maybe. But speaking of standings, how are we doing in our pick'em?
Yeah, great question. So once again, I forgot to add them up before we recorded. So you're going to listen to me record them live, or record the scores live. I correctly predicted myself. I incorrectly predicted Alex and Zach to win. Correctly predicted Anthony to win. Correctly predicted you to win. Correctly predicted Erik and EBO to tie.
Man.
Shout out to me. And incorrectly picked Ruthvik and Nick to win. So the Erik and EBO tie counts as a W for me. So that would be
Congrats.
4-2. You correctly predicted me to win. You incorrectly picked Alex and Zach and Yuki to tie, but you came damn close to getting that one right. You correctly picked Anthony to win. You correctly picked you to win. You incorrectly picked Erik to tie, and you incorrectly picked Ruthvik and Nick to win. So you went 3-1-2 this week. So not quite. I guess you and I had the same winning percentage of the week.
Looks like it.
But yours came with one less win, but one less loss as well, but 2 more ties. That puts me on the season at 45, 19, and 8. And that puts you on the season at 36, 18, and 17.
Okay.
So when you convert that, that puts me at 49 and 23. And that puts you at 44, 26, and 1. So I think that you're about 4.5 games back. You ready to hear my picks?
I am.
All right. I am 12-0 picking myself this year, and I am picking myself again. So I think I will beat Daniel and Alex. I think that Clayton and Jake will beat Yuki. I think that Anthony will beat Alex and Zach. I think that you will beat Andrew, but it's going to be closer than we would have expected. Otherwise, I think Erik is going to pull it off against Ruthvik and Nick. And I think really the tough matchup to pick this week is EBO versus Conor and Conor. And I'm tempted to pick EBO to tie again. But just given how badly Conor and Conor played last week, I'm going to pick EBO just to outright win.
Yeah, so my picks are going to be the exact same as yours, except I'm going to pick that tie in the last one.
Okay, so you're picking me, you're picking Clayton and Jake, you're picking Anthony, you're picking yourself, you're picking Erik, and you're picking an EBO and Conor tie. All righty. That's interestingly enough, so I do have the picks that we made the last time we had these sets of matchups. And I made, let's see, the only pick I made different from last time was I picked Ruthvik and Nick to beat Erik when the opposite happened. Or when I picked the opposite this time around. And you picked Ruthvik and Nick and Erik to tie last time. And this time you're picking EBO and Conor to tie. Last time you picked EBO to win, as did I. So,
so not a lot's changed since the beginning of the year, but some certainly has.
Yeah. I mean, back then we still thought EBO was a championship contender, and I thought that Ruthvik and Nick might have had a better team than Erik. How the times have changed.
Times have changed. Ruthvik was 3-0. Andrew was 0-4.
Man, this is why we play the games, folks. To see what's actually going to happen, because it's never what we think is going to happen.
It is. Well, it usually is, considering our record, but sometimes it's not. It's fun.
Yeah, no, you are not wrong. But all right, anything else we want to dive into before we sign off?
No, that's about it. Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah, I will not be on next week's podcast. I will be in Los Angeles, and rather than interrupt my family vacation to record the podcast, I will be taking a week off. We have some stuff in store though, so we haven't finalized what the format of next week's episode is going to be. So make sure to tune in for what's going to be another great episode number 39.
Yeah, enjoy your trip, and everyone enjoy your 4th of July weekend.
Yep.
And the moon, it is resting while the sun, it breaks free.
This podcast is good.